Chapter 22 of Heat, page 149. In his heart, Michael knew he wasn't going to play any more baseball this season. But it was all right. Really, it was. Even if this was his only one and only chance to make it to the Little League World Series, even if it turned out he missed out on that, he told himself he would get over it, as long as he and Carlos got to stay together. And Michael had to admit, he felt a lot better about their chances now that Uncle Timo had put on such a good show for Mr. Gibbs. So he kept telling himself to feel good about that, mostly because he needed to feel good about something today. The first day of the playoffs for the Clippers. After all the surprises in his life lately, just about every single one of them bad, Uncle Timo turning himself into Poppy the way he had, that was most definitely a good thing. Maybe that was the way you should go through life, if you really thought about it. Maybe if you didn't expect good things to happen to you, well, when something did, it would seem much bigger and better than it actually was. A few days ago, the only victory that had mattered, that would have mattered today, would have been the Clippers over the Rosedale Park Robins at Macomb. Not anymore. The biggest win of the day was Uncle Timo, by a lot. Everything after this was going to be cherry on top of the ice cream sundae that Manny was always talking about. In Manny's view of the world, there was also another Sunday coming along that needed another cherry, just because Manny believed every single day was going to be the best of his whole life. Michael tried to remember the last time he had felt that way about stuff, but he couldn't. The Rosedale Park Robins were really good, at least when they had all their players. The problem for them was that they had played most of the season without their best player, Corey Allen, their Michael Arrow, as Manny referred to him. Corey Allen had managed to slice open the bottom of his foot playing soccer barefoot just a couple of days into District 22's season. He'd had to get 20 stitches, or so Manny had heard from a friend of his who played on the Robins and hadn't returned to his team until there were 2 weeks to go in the regular season, pitching well enough to get them the last slot of the playoffs. If he'd been healthy, Anthony Farrow was saying after infield practice at Macomb, they'd have been good enough to fight us for the number one seed. Manny at that moment was trying to stuff a world's record amount of bubble gum in his mouth, his right cheek already looking as if he had a baseball in there. Yeah, he said, and if my mom had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. I was just saying, Anthony said. Mr. Minya said, the great football coach, Bill Parcells, has a saying. Michael looked at Manny, who rolled his eyes just because for about the 1,000th time Mr. Minya had a saying that applied to whatever they happened to be talking about. Michael figured that the great Bill Parcells probably ran out of sayings eventually, but Mr. M never did. Mr. M said, Coach Parcells likes to say that in sports you are what your record says you are. I like our record a lot better than we had Michael, Manny said. We will win tonight and get Mr. Arrow back somehow before we play again, Mr. M said. In your dreams, Michael thought, and mine. Win one with Michael, Manny said. Win one for Michael, Anthony said. Then all the Clippers were gathered around Michael and chanting, Mike, 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 almost making him feel like a real part of the team. Right before the start of the game, Mr. M came over to where Michael was sitting, at the end of the bench, near the big duffel bag filled with their practice balls. I want you to coach third base tonight, Mr. M said. Michael put a hand to his ear, as if he hadn't heard him correctly. Excuse me? I want you to coach third. No way, Mr. M grinned. Way, he said, sounding like one of the kids on the team. Mr. M, he said, you always coach third every single game. And this isn't every single game, it's the playoff game. I know, I know. Corey Allen is pitching, Michael said, which means every run is going to count. Yes, I'm aware of that, Mr. M said. Michael looked around to make sure nobody else was hearing. Please don't make me. You should want to coach third, Mr. M said. Why is that? Michael said. Because coaching third is the close as you will get to the action without actually playing, Mr. M said. And in my opinion, getting you as close to the action as possible gives us the best possible chances to win the game. Michael could see there was no way he was going to change his mind. Once Mr. M dug in, he dug in. I hope you are right, Michael said. I am. He was wrong. In the bottom of the fifth, with Anthony Fierro and Manny's words pitching his lungs off, the game was still scoreless. Kell was on first, nobody out. Manny put a great swing on Corey Allen's fastball and drilled it up the alley and left corner, between the center fielder and the left fielder. It looked as if the ball was going to roll all the way to the wall, until it didn't. The center fielder came over and cut the ball off. By then, Michael was sure that the ball was deep enough to score Kell whether it got cut off or not. So he was sending Kell all the way from the time he rounded second, waving his arms like he was a windmill, even as the center fielder made a perfect cutoff throw to Corey Allen himself, standing near second base. Michael sent Kell home, even though he could have held him at third, and the Clippers would have runners on second and third, still with nobody out. Corey Allen caught the ball and turned to throw home, all in one motion. Threw home as if they were throwing one of his fastballs through a perfect strike of the Robins catcher, who put the tag on Cal and kept the game 0-0. Manny didn't take third on the throw to the plate. He hesitated as he watched the play at the plate. Then he must have decided that he didn't want to run himself into a double play, run the Clippers right out of the inning. So he only got to third when Chris Norris grounded out of the Robins' second baseman, the kid making a terrific sliding stop to keep the ball from going into right field, then getting Norris by the first step. Then Anthony Fierro struck out to the end of the inning. Michael thought, even with my bonehead play, Manny should have been on third. With one out, that late in the game, the Robins would have had to bring the infield in for a possible play at the plate on a ground ball, and Chris Norris's play would have gone past the second baseman before he even moved on it, and Manny could have walked home. Stop it, you jerk. Mr. M always said, never assume how things could have played out in baseball, or how an inning could have played itself out. The truth was that Manny should have been on second and Kell on third and nobody out, and from there it would have been practically impossible for the Clippers not to be ahead 1-0. Only they weren't ahead. We were still tied. Because of me, Michael thought. What had he been thinking? He had always taken pride in knowing the right play at any given moment in the game. Poppy had schooled him on the fundamentals from the first time he played organized baseball in Havana. Back when he was 7. When he was in the outfield, he always hit the right cutoff man. When he was pitching, he backed up first base on even the most routine plays in the infield. He never took a chance on the bases, never. It wasn't sure he could take an extra base. Even as close as the backstop behind home plate was at the moment of the fields where they played, Manny knew Michael would always have his back on plays at the plate. 3 or 4 times this season, there had been a bad relay throw, then skipped past Manny, but Michael had been there to scoop the ball up and throw out somebody on the other team, being foolish enough to take an extra base on him. Now he had been responsible for the bonehead play of the year. The District 22 playoffs were double elimination, so the season wasn't over if the Clippers lost to the Robins. Just as good as over, because as soon as you lost a game in the playoffs, you went into the losers bracket Losers like me, Michael thought as he walked slowly behind the screen to get back to the bench and had to play another losing team the next day just to keep playing. Extra games meant extra pitches, and the players without Michael didn't have enough pitching to begin with. Forget about making it to Williamsport. If they were losing tonight, they'd be lucky to make it in the end of the sticking week. Forget it, Manny said after Michael had taken what felt like a 5 mile walk back to the bench and sat down with him. We'll get him next inning. Michael pulled his cap down as tight as he could over his eyes. What makes you think so? Because we are not losing to the Robins. That's what makes me think so, Manny said, using Manny logic. Maybe we just did. Michael tried to pull the cap down even lower over his eyes, like he wanted to use it as a mask. I am such a loser. Hey, Manny said. He reached over and tried to pull Michael's cap off his eyes and pulled it right off his head instead. Look at me, Manny said in a mean voice Michael almost didn't recognize. Michael turned around, staring at the cap at Manny's hand, like he was the magician who came into school once a year and had just pulled the rabbit out of his hat. Manny said, If you're going to talk like a loser, go sit somewhere else, because I don't want to listen to you anymore. Maybe there was another time when his best friend had talked to him like that, but Michael sure couldn't remember it. All you meant was that you're feeling sorry for yourself and you want to tell me all about it, Manny said. I'm just telling you to stop, okay? Because it's not doing us any good, okay? Okay. You want to make yourself useful, Manny said. Figure out something that'll help us win the game. He handed Michael's back his cap, okay? Okay already, Michael said. Manny finished putting his catcher's equipment back on while Mr. M warmed up Anthony. It seemed like about 5 minutes later, the Robins had the bases loaded with 2 outs. Mr. M asked Michael, who'd been charting Anthony's pitches, how many he had thrown. 60 on the nose, Michael said. Well, then he's done, isn't he? Coach, Michael said. Corey Allen's up. You know, he's their best hitter on top of being their best pitcher. Anthony only gave him a single first time up, and then he got him to fly to Teddy. He's still our best chance, even if he's right up against the pitch limit. Nobody pitches past 60, Michael, not even you. 60 for Mr. M, who always said he was never going to put a 12-year-old pitcher arm in jeopardy, was as much magic number for him as 80, as in miles per hour, was for Michael and Manny. Well, who are you going to bring? Michael said. Mr. M leaned back, closed his eyes for a second, then said, Cal. Maybe after seeing Anthony throw nothing but fastballs all game, Cal can fool Corey with a couple of those waffle balls he throws up there. Mr. M sat up straight, clapped his hands together one time as if that settled it. Cal it is. For one batter. If he gets out of it, I'll go with Norris in the extra innings. Mr. M called time, walked out to the mound, called all the infielders in when he got there, and he put his arm around Anthony's shoulder, took the ball from him. Mr. M called time, walked out to the mound, called all the infielders in when he got there, put his arm around Anthony's shoulder, took the ball from him. Then Michael saw Mr. M talking to Cal. Saw Kel's eyes get wide as he looked at Corey Allen in an on-deck circle. Saw Kel turn back to Mr. M and mouthed the words, No way. Mr. M said something else. Kel had something back, and then suddenly Kel laughed. Mr. M put Anthony at third. They moved Chris Norris to short, walked back to the bench, and Kel began taking his warm-ups. Michael asked what had been so funny that it got a laugh out of Kel. Manny, what did he say? Mr. M laughed now. Well, he didn't actually say anything. Michael knew. I asked if anybody had anything they wanted to add, and Manny made his famous whoopee cushion noise, the one he seems to be able to produce at will. Michael said, his signature move. Then he and Mr. M both watched, neither one of them saying anything, as Cal, throwing pitches that really did seem to float up the home plate like buds flowing in the wind, finally got Corey Allen to take a huge swing at a 2-2 pitch and pop the ball to Norris for the third out. It ain't over. Game still 0-0. Michael nudged Mr. M and struck out his palm so that Mr. M could give him a low five. Righteous pitching move, he said. Mr. M said, See, that's the thing, Michael. They're all good moves in baseball when they work.